And maybe a challenge to your listeners is, are you being courageous enough and are you being urgent enough? And point to those others that, oh, gee, they're being lucky or they're being good or they're whatever else, and say, well, why can't you be them? Maybe they've just been a bit more courageous, a bit more urgent.
Welcome to the Profitable Farmer podcast, where we share stories and tips to help you run a better farming business and create your very own freedom farm. If you're looking to work smarter and not harder in your farm business, welcome. You're in the right place. G'day everyone, I hope this finds you well. Hey, I don't do this often, but I'm on the board of an incredible charity called Active Farmers. And I wanted to make sure you were aware of a raffle that they're running to win a brand new John Deere tractor 6140M plus a 463R self-leveling loader. The total prize value is an astounding $280,000 plus. Active Farmers are running this raffle. You can buy tickets to this until midday on November 21st of this year, 2024. So it's an incredible raffle that helps support Active Farmers, who are a registered not-for-profit charity dedicated to enhancing the well-being and the health and fitness of farming families and people across small rural communities through group fitness sessions and engaging community events. Their grassroots approach focus on addressing critical issues like poor mental health and alarming suicide rates in rural Australia. Each month across Australia, Active Farmers runs more than 300 classes in 65 small farming communities, engaging more than 1,500 participants. As a charity, this raffle is intended to help us raise funds so that we can expand that great service to more small communities across regional Australia. So I encourage you to buy a ticket. It's $100 and your chance to win a $280,000 John Deere tractor and self-leveling loader. Encourage you to get on board before the 21st of November. And well done, Active Farmers, for the great work that you do supporting rural individuals and families. G'day, welcome to Profitable Farmer. In this episode, I'm delighted to introduce a good mate of mine that I went to university with, 25 plus years ago. Was it 1995 to 1999, I think, in Leneghan. And he's one of those guys that back then I knew, you just have an instinct, don't you, that some people are going to do well and make an impact. And Liam, as founder and managing director to GO.Farm Australia, is one of those people. Just to introduce Liam, before establishing GO.Farm, Liam gained over 20 years of experience in applied ag research, agronomy, farm management consulting, and private investment. Recognising the opportunity to bring new capital into our sector to transform underutilised farming assets, Liam founded GO.Farm Australia in 2013. GO.Farm's vision for transforming Australian agriculture has driven the development and management of $1.2 billion worth of agricultural assets, including 96,000 hectares of farmland producing high-value crops such as almonds, mandarins, tomatoes, winegrapes, grains, pulses, and oilseeds. With a strong focus on innovation through a responsible agriculture lens, GO.Farm's investment strategies deliver a positive impact for its environment and local communities, while generating significant wealth for its investors. Only just over 10 years old, and it is amazing to think that this project started as an idea and has grown to engage with a team of over 250 people managing $1.2 billion worth of farmland assets. Liam, you talk in this about how courage, if you had your time again, or one of the lessons you've learned is being more courageous and having more conviction. Mate, I just want to congratulate you on the amount of courage that you've shown to pursue a meaningful and worthwhile vision, and the amount of conviction you've shown to achieve what you have within GO.Farm Australia and your career within just 10 years or slightly over. Liam, great to have you on Profitable Farmer. And to all of you listening, I encourage you almost to stop what you're doing, grab a pen and paper, because there are some incredible insights in this conversation that I look forward to sharing with you now with Liam Leneghan. So I've been looking forward to this conversation for some time with an old uni mate in Liam Leneghan. Liam, great to see you again. Thanks for your time and welcome to Profitable Farmer.
Well, it's my pleasure, Hutch. I think, and I guess it's been 30 years in the making, yeah, from uni through to today. So it's great to reconnect again and be part of the conversation.
Thanks, Liam. Hey, how do you reflect on, and I think last night you were at a small gathering or a small reunion at Melbourne Uni. How do you reflect on your time doing ag science at Melbourne Uni?
I walked away thinking I probably didn't make enough of the opportunity that was afforded me at university. And I also reflected to a friend I was there with that, Professor Bill Malcolm, who's the ag economics professor, was probably the one lecturer who actually taught me something, and the rest very little. And I'm not sure whether that's a reflection on them or on me. And my friend assured me it was a reflection on me. So there you go.
And so last night, Liam, a fireside chat with some of the best ag minds at Melbourne Uni. What was one of your key kind of takeaways? What was the conversation around?
I think one of the profound statements that was made by Bill Malcolm was, he pointed out that profound reality and the challenges that creates for the consumer, for the supply chain, and of course for the farmer.
What does that mean when you hear him say that? Just unpack that for me. What does it mean?
Well, I think, as the world's grown up, it all starts. I suppose civilization all starts with food production, and then as it progresses, agriculture plays a smaller and smaller role in terms of contribution to total GDP. But its importance never diminishes. But as civilization grows, new services and professions and careers emerge, and people move further away from the farm. And I think go back a generation, most Australians had some sort of connection with the farm and with agriculture, and they understood the cycle of life, the rearing of stock, the growing of crops, the vagaries, the challenges, the responsibility for land stewardship, what it means to rural communities, et cetera, but, through time and through change, there's a disconnect or a moving away from that. And there's nothing wrong with that per se. That's just reality. But then that innate understanding of, well, as a consumer, if I want this, the implications of that begins to break down. And I think, you and I discussed earlier, probably in its most extreme form that we're seeing now is expectation perhaps out of Europe in terms of, our food must be X, Y, and Z, and that's great to set those targets, and I have no issue with that on the one hand, but on the other, do those who are making those demands actually understand food production at its core, and that if you were to remove some of the technologies that exist currently, can we continue to produce the level of food that's required to sustain the mouths of the world? Maybe, maybe not. And do we have the alternative technologies and farming systems to maintain and enhance productivity in the absence of what's currently being utilised? And again, as you and I discussed earlier, necessity is the mother of invention. And I think faced with those challenges, agriculture's clever enough and good enough to rise to the occasion, but it'll take time. And so, dropping the hammer and saying 2030 is the date, thereafter thou shalt not, becomes problematic, I think, for a lot of people, not just food producers, but food consumers. And of course, those that are impacted the most are those that are at the margins.
Liam, just speaking to that, in your capability statement, and thanks for sending this through, you talk about the fact that global food demand is forecast to increase by about 50% by 2050. Just thinking about that comment that Bill made with that significant increase in global food demand, does it mean that the story that we put around and the narrative that we have around the product that we sell is more important than ever?
I think not necessarily because, I might contradict myself here. I think it's really important that society at large and consumers understand what it takes to produce food in a clean and sustainable fashion. And the challenge that and it's not just Australian farmers, it's food producers all around the world, right, is how do we continue to advance our farming practices and food production systems that can meet the growing population and growing demand for food in the face of climate change uncertainty without destroying the planet. I think that's the big challenge, right? And so it's not as simple as the world will need 50% more food. It's going to need 50% more food produced from less resource in an environment that's going to be hotter and more unstable. And so how do we do that? Do we have the technologies? Do we have the industry capability? Do we have the capital? Do we have the will? Do we have the skills? So all those sorts of things, I think, are really important. And, this isn't an agricultural problem. This is a societal problem. And maybe problem's the wrong word, challenge. I prefer to take the more positive side to it. Like, it's not just a challenge for agriculture, it's a challenge for society. So the opportunity is probably on two levels. One's around the storytelling. Like, if Professor Bill Malcolm's right, and I suspect he is, that at no point in history have people had a keener interest in understanding the food they consume, well, then we can take that interest and link it, educate them on food production systems and farming practices. So, that we've got some momentum, or there's the opportunity to build momentum because that interest exists. And then there's this great opportunity to rise to the challenge of, finding another 50% food production in a sustainable fashion, right? And so the spoils of that challenge will go to those that are open to change, that are willing to take risks, that can harness the capital and the capability to lean into that and say, well, rather than admire the problem, let's find a solution and have a real swing at it. And so, that's what we're about at GO.Farm, not admiring problems, finding solutions and, finding great people and giving them big things to do. And so we're really excited by the challenge of what the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years means for Australian agriculture, global agriculture and, and the citizens of the world. So, we're small, but, we're trying to do big things and we'd like to think, and without being arrogant at all, that we can take a leadership position to demonstrate what's possible.
So, Liam, would you mind just describing GO.Farm as it stands today?
Yeah, sure. So we're an agricultural investment manager at its simplest form, I suppose, but we come at it from a different angle to most, I think. Like, we're very deliberate agents for change. So we're not interested in buying farmland and buying a wheat farm and continuing to be a wheat farmer or being so arrogant as to assume that we can outperform the best of the wheat farmers that are out there now. We come at it from a productivity perspective and say we're looking for step change opportunities. So it really plays out through land use change. So where in the landscape are there underutilised or undercapitalised assets where, with the application of good people, good technology, infrastructure, and the prudent application of capital, we can create the 1 + 1 = 3 type scenarios. And, so far, so good. We've been able to find those opportunities and invest into them. And that's across a number of commodities, but inevitably it's got a look and a feel of property development. It's taking those underutilised things and investing in making them bigger and better and more sustainable and more productive and more profitable. But whilst it looks like property development, and it is, it all rides off the back of productivity. And we're not looking for the incremental stuff. That's important. We're looking for the step change stuff. And that generally means breaking things, tipping them upside down and starting again and doing something completely different to what's been done in the past.
So can you give us an overview of some of those projects that are in play? I think almonds, tomatoes, broadacre cropping, olives, citrus, grapes, and conservation. It's a really diverse portfolio now.
It is, and we haven't set out to build a diversified something for the sake of diversifying. And we're bits of subscribers to Charlie Munger's theory of diversification. The more you do, the worse you get at it. There's only so many things you can be really good at. We're mindful of that. And as I say, we're not deliberately trying to be diversified. I think our diversification comes through temporal scale in that, over the last 10 or 12 years since founding the business, our strategy is always to act with high conviction. So find the very best opportunities in the market at that point and try and go big in them, really move the needle. And then through time, there's been some other really big opportunity that we've identified and we've tried to grab hold of that and go forward. And so, yes, we're across a number of crop types now, but that's because along the journey, we've seen a big opportunity and sought to grab it and, add it to what we do. So that's where we arrive. We're in plant industries only at this stage, Hutch, and that's, really an extension of my own professional knowledge base and circle of competence or confidence and that of my partners. GO.Farm's a business that's owned 50-50 by myself and the Costa family out of Geelong. Some of your listeners might know the Costa family, well known in the fruit and veg circle. So, with their background in hort and mine in broadacre agriculture, we feel most comfortable and feel like we're playing to our advantage in the plant-based industry.
So how did this come to be? I think you founded GO.Farm in 2013, Liam. Can you tell us about the inception of this project and how it came to be?
Well, it was probably birthed out of frustration. I thought there was a better way of doing things, and I was also a fairly ordinary employee. So, working for someone for the rest of my life wasn't going to work for them or me. So I needed to go and start something. I've always been keen on growing things, and the challenge of growing a business and building a team and making a difference, and particularly making a difference in rural Australia was something that I held and still hold, close to my heart. Farm kid, 5th generation, making a contribution and being successful. Set yourself that target. But no shame in achieving and being successful. That was a driver. But being successful whilst making that contribution and I suppose demonstrating to the naysayers there is an element in the agricultural community and in society that likes to play the violin and talk about the hardships of agriculture. Invariably, they exist. They exist in every industry and every walk of life. It's acknowledging that, but moving towards what can I do about things? Where are the areas of control and focus on, the growth opportunities. So that's where that all came about. But in terms of GO.Farm, my backstory, as I said, grew up on a family farm. It was a wool property. It was a property that had lots of optionality, but, for a range of factors. My father was very committed to that industry and sought not to change. That came with consequences, for him, for the farm, for the family. And I think that was a source of frustration for me. And I sought to think, well, in that situation, there was a trapped asset, for want of a better description, that could have and should have done more. And, then as a young man travelling up and down the back roads and back lanes of rural Australia, I could see underutilised assets scattered across the landscape, and I guess had the view that the impact of that was on many levels. It was on that family that owned the farm, and it was on that, or in that community in which that asset was held, and for the asset itself, was it being neglected or was it operating suboptimally? And I thought, if there was a way that you could sort of get your arms around and gather up all of those lost opportunities and make them better, then that would be a really great thing to do. It would result in better land management. It would result in more resilient communities and more resilient families, and it'd be good for the industry, and it'd be good for the nation, exports and taxes and job creation, all that sort of stuff. So that was and remains the fire in the belly to get out there and find those and do something about it. But I think there was a couple of seminal pieces of work that occurred which really became a catalyst for starting GO.Farm. And the first was spending a period of time with a guy, Mike Carroll. Mike was an executive at NAB who championed the idea of specialist rural bankers that lived and breathed the industry. And he championed the idea of NAB agribusiness, won support, and he led that for the first 8 or 9 years. That position gave Mike the opportunity and privilege of working with some of the best family businesses in agriculture, and gave him great connection and great insight. And working with Mike, we took the opportunity to reflect back on, the best of the best, and ran 25 case studies of what was the secret sauce to their success. And, the things that industry cites, timeliness of operation, ruthless cost control, rapid adoption of technology, and debt funding, appreciating assets, were inevitably present in the stories of all of those family corporates, but they weren't, to our estimate and conclusion, they weren't the primary drivers. And the primary drivers was land use change and capturing property rights. They were the big levers, and that made a lot of sense to me, having observed what I had as a child growing up, working in industry in early days as an agronomist and farm management consultant. That I started joining the dots. I thought, this is really interesting. There's something in all of this. So that was there, and then ANZ came out in 2012 and published its Greener Pastures report, a report that they'd commissioned Port Jackson Partners to prepare, and it spoke to the size of the prize of the global soft commodities boom and what that meant for Australia and New Zealand. And the numbers that they were talking, they were telephone book numbers, zeros on zeros on zeros. I thought, wow, this is a massive opportunity. And then they spoke to the need for innovation, industry capacity and capability and capital to unlock that opportunity. And again, they were telephone book numbers. And I thought, oh my goodness, it's a huge opportunity. And there's a lot of space to play in there. So I think, adding here's a model for success based on a historical context, and here's an enormous opportunity. I thought, look, I've just got to go and have a go, see if I can do something in that space. So I think they were the seminal pieces of work and thinking and ultimately catalyst for me starting GO.Farm.
How important was that time in agronomy, in R&D? I think working with Birchip Cropping Group and other organisations, how important was that foundational learning before you launched GO.Farm for you, Len?
Well, it was critical, Hutch, and I think, and it's always difficult to generalise, but when I see agriculture at the moment, it's attracting a lot of money, which overwhelmingly is positive. But I see a lot of the decision makers in some of those organisations as being very intelligent, but their disciplines and background rest in other industries, whether it be banking or law or finance or something else. And I feel like we've got this unfair competitive advantage because the people in our business have deep connection to agriculture and significant technical capability. Look, we understand the fundamentals, and as silly as that sounds, it just gives us a great starting point and a competitive advantage. So, yeah, that was important to get those technical skills, whether it be soil science or plant physiology or farming systems, build those foundations. But I think it was time in the saddle too, just dealing with humans and understanding a little bit about human behaviour and what makes farmers tick and what makes humans tick a little bit, to sort of say, well, all right, how do we work with and around various personality types? So pretty important. Had an old auntie that always used to bang on about knowledge is no burden to carry, and as a kid that meant nothing. What an old crackpot. I think with the journey of age and experience, you start to think about those sorts of things, and definitely my first 10 or 15 years on farm, whether it be applied research, whether it be consulting and agronomy, was part of gathering that knowledge, and certainly it's no burden to carry.
What was your vision back in 2013 when you kicked off, Len?
I have said in honest moments, I'm not really sure what I thought we were going to be, but whatever it was I thought we were going to be, what we are now is different, but what we are now is much better. I knew there was an opportunity to bring capital into agriculture, like the old model of retained earnings and debt, whilst important, has some constraints around it, and the size of the opportunity and the size of the capital need and the size of the industry capability growth that is required to achieve what's possible demanded more than the old model. And so I thought, right, I've got a role to play in that. And then there's this insight that I'd gathered with Mike Carroll and through my own experiences, that, well, there's an angle to play. And so that was sort of, pointing and poking at that, but without a very clear or well-articulated purpose or mission. And of course, wind forward to today, our purpose is very clear. We're here to transform Australian agriculture. And, our part in that is to find great people, give them big things to do, look for the best of the opportunity sets and apply the capital and the guardrails and get out of their way and champion their success. And that is working. Long may it continue to work. We're a business that has been able to deliver success, and that's allowed us to build momentum and do more. So, for a business that started out in 2013, we had no staff, no investors and no investments. We wind forward to today. We have some 250 staff, $1.3 billion worth of land and water assets, and a group of really loyal, committed and rewarded investors that believe in Australian agriculture, believe in GO.Farm's purpose, and are enjoying the benefits of great financial returns and enjoying the benefits of doing good in rural communities and out on farm. So, yep, where we started and where we are probably different things, but I'm really pleased with where we're at. But we also hold the belief that what got us to here won't get us to there. So I don't think we can rest on our laurels at all. We've got to stay focused and keep pursuing the opportunities.
It's amazing to get just beyond your 10th birthday as a business and to think that you've grown from that standing start with no team, Liam, to over 250 team members across multiple projects. It's a pretty amazing 10-year story.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you saying so. It's not something that, when you're living it, it's not something that you're, reflecting on. And it's only when others sort of pull you up and make you stop and sort of look back over the shoulder and say, well, that's where GO.Farm was. This is where it is. You must be proud of that and well done. And even last night I had a supporter from afar compliment me on GO.Farm success, and I should say GO.Farm success is owed to so many people. This isn't the Leneghan story. Like, GO.Farm success is because we've got so many capable and committed people, both within the business and service providers and our investors and others that make it work. But yeah, I am proud of it. In terms of proud of GO.Farm, I'm really proud of our people. I'm proud of the difference that I believe we're making and the positive impact that we're having. But the job's far from done, so I don't think we can sit back with feet up saying, well, there you are. We're there, we've arrived, we've done it all. That's not the case at all.
Liam, what are a couple of the projects that you are most proud of? I think just hearing you speak to those will give our listeners an insight of the sort of impact you're having on specific land assets and communities. Would you mind just sharing a couple of stories that you're most proud of?
Yeah, well, I'm proud of all the investments we've made. I don't think there's nothing there. It's a bit like asking a parent to pick their favourite child, aren't you? We can do that off air, right? But we can't.
Yeah, that's right.
Can't record that. I think by virtue of our investment style, as I said, we're agents for change. And what we've found is, everyone wants progress. No one likes change. And so that's been an interesting journey at times. But, if I was to speak to one of our very early investments was build a portfolio of 8 farms in the junction of the Murrumbidgee and Murray rivers. And it gave us direct and continuous ownership between the 2 rivers. And so we now hold a portfolio of assets that have water rights, extraction and delivery rights off the 2 largest rivers in the Southern Connected Basin, which gives us great resilience and optionality in water security, in water delivery, in water pricing and arbitrage. But more importantly than that is we bought those 8 farms off 2 father and son teams, and they were dry land assets, some 9,000 hectares, 3 or 4 full-time equivalents, producing $2 or $3 or $4 million worth of agricultural product per year. And the nearest township of Balranald, in less than 2,000 people. We put that aggregation together, built a project, tipped in the capital with a partner out of the US in that instance, and we've transformed those assets now to almond orchard that covers almost 4,500 hectares, delivers 80 full-time jobs in that community. And, as I said, it's gone from 4 to 80, over $100 million worth of agricultural product at farm gate per annum. And we've just commissioned in the last few months a $90 million hulling and shelling facility on the outskirts of Swan Hill, which delivers another 30 jobs. And so, that becomes a 30 or 40 year commitment to those farms and those communities. And we've moved the needle in terms of job creation, the value of agricultural output, the opportunity for service providers, whether it be the fuel provider or the electrician or the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker. The outcomes are significant and really positive. And for me, I look at the investment return, we go, that's been a stellar investment outcome. But by the time you stack on top of that the non-financial returns from making that investment, I think it's a wonderful example of what can be achieved in Australian agriculture. And I'm not for a moment suggesting we're the only people doing it or capable of doing it. There's this massive opportunity. What we'd like to do is demonstrate the possibilities and have others jump in and join us, because that's how we're going to really progress Australian ag and feed the world.
What impact do you see that project having on that local community, and what would the community to broadly say about your involvement?
Yeah, so interesting. We bought another asset in that neighbourhood in the last 6 months, and we had one of the journos saying, "Oh, what's the community going to think?" And well, the community knows us very well. We've been there since 2015. We employ 80 people and we support a whole heap of businesses. I reckon the community is pretty excited that we've continued to see opportunity locally and continue to invest in it. So I think there's great acknowledgement and acceptance that this is really positive. And around that township of Balranald, we've got, not we, but the district has 2 large solar farm projects. There's 2 mineral sands projects. There's Project Energy Connect coming through. The Balranald that I saw 10 or 15 years ago with the closing of firewood harvesting in the red gum forests, poor old Balranald, it lost its major industry, and people were wondering what the future looked like. You go there now, you've got to book a bed weeks in advance if you want to stay. It's a thriving hub, and that's only positive for mine. Could you find someone down the street that wanted to have a whinge about it? Probably, but you'll always find them.
I think there has been a general thought process that corporate agriculture coming into communities lends to less people and, part of the problem rather than part of the solution. I think it's great that you share an example of how GO.Farm's arriving can actually really contribute positively in community. And I completely get that that's a real priority for you and your leadership team.
Yeah. I think the perception's wrong around corporate agriculture. Absolutely. It means often things are done differently, but potentially they're done better. There aren't too many bad actors, is my observation. I think the capital that those corporate investors or managers are stewarding have expectations of how those businesses conduct themselves in terms of professional standards, in terms of local procurement, contribution to communities, etc., etc. So I think the perception and the reality don't align. And then I look at the size of the prize, and you look at the National Farmers Federation, $100 billion farm gate target. Marry that up with the ANZ report. I think there's something like $400 billion worth of capital required to deliver the productivity and farm succession to get to that target. So, $160 billion worth of capital required for farm succession between now and 2030. And that's just around the corner. And another $240 billion to unlock productivity by 2030. And again, that's just around the corner. And I don't think the incremental productivity gains and the old model of retained earnings and debt alone can get the industry there. It needs investment from non-traditional sources. And I think it can be so positive. I've got friends in the industry who have built really great businesses. They're farmers, but they've built really great businesses around service provision to some of this institutional capital and some of the corporate farmers and fund managers. And, it's built a level of resilience into their business. That's another income stream. It's enabled them to build more capable teams. It's enabled them to finance, better technology, which of course they can leverage across their own assets as well as others. They've learnt more about work, health and safety and what a safe workplace looks like and the infrastructure and culture and attitude that's required there. They're learning about ESG expectations and, it's a two-way street. Everyone's learning and progressing. And I think, we can probably all find stories of a bad actor or a bad outcome here, there or wherever, but by and large, they will be completely overwhelmed by positive outcomes from corporate investment in agriculture.
Liam, would you mind just sharing how you've gone about sourcing that non-traditional capital. Is it private? Is it institutional? Just would love to hear the backstory on how GO.Farm has evolved in that space.
Yeah, well, I probably don't the hard way, Hutch. Like most things I do, find the hard way and go that way. Yeah, so I think naively, and it's probably very fortunate I was naive, because had I realised how long it'd take and how much it would hurt and how much it would cost to get this thing off the ground and started, I mightn't have bothered. But anyway, led by passion and energy and a response to some frustration, I thought, no, I'm going to do this. So off I went. I put a lot of time and energy into, and we still do, the research and insights into where are the best places to invest. And of course, I thought, by doing so, building a really compelling offering and telling the story and showing the path forward, that the money would just fall into my pockets and away we'd go. What a naive view. I found it very difficult to win support. I think agriculture now is emerging as an asset class, which seems a bit ironic for those of us that are in ag, that it's this new exciting thing. Yeah, what do you mean? We've always been here, but it is now on the radar of institutional capital. It wasn't so much when I started out. And so, I ended up turning to family and friends effectively and sort of saying, well, I've got this harebrained idea, I'm convinced it's going to work, and just worked really hard at convincing others that it would. And I was very fortunate to have the support of a couple of individuals in the first instance that said, well, we think your ideas are good enough and your conviction strong enough and your motivation clear enough that you might be able to do this. And so here's some money and don't lose it. And there's more of that where it came from if you can do a good job. And so it started off, really small, and that worked. And so, they tipped a bit more into the next project, and, word of mouth. It has been really organic, the growth. We don't have, I think there might be a perception that, there's hundreds and thousands of investors on our investor list. There isn't. I can name them all. There's 30, 35 investors. They're primarily family offices and high net worth individuals here in Australia. We have a couple of institutional relationships with a superannuation fund here in Australia, one out of the US, and a joint venture partnership with a US fund manager. So it's a small coterie of investors. All our investors know us, we know them, and that's part of the joy and fun in doing this, is that we don't have faceless, nameless investors. We know who they are. They're engaged with our projects, with our teams, with our assets. We interact with them regularly, and that's the fun, and they get the investment return, and they get those interactions and exposures to what a real investment in agriculture looks like and how it works and what the drivers are. So, yeah.
So, Liam, how do you uncover an underutilised asset? Like, what do you look for to identify one? And then how do you go about determining what the best use of that resource is in terms of shaping a transformation?
Yeah, well, I think in its simplest form, and any of your farm listeners would be quick to recognise in their own neighbourhood. If I could just get my foot on so-and-so's place, what I could do with it, there's that innate knowledge of capability, right? So, well, if I got hold of that, I would do X, Y, and Z, and the result would be, A, B, and C. So there's that. But we have a team here that is singularly focused to research, applied research, and building insights. And the things that they focus on are looking for market shifts, looking for regulatory shifts, looking for climate shifts, looking for infrastructure enablers. And where do those things exist across the landscape then becomes a point of interest for us. We spend time looking at supply and demand of various food types and commodities, and And, is this a short-term blip or is this a, structural move? We're a little bit contrarian. Where's the hardship? And that's not to be, some sort of vulture, but, we're often intrigued by, there's sometimes a narrow lens applied to agriculture. Dairying went through its period of hardship, and in the Northern Irrigation District in particular, and everyone kept looking at it as a dairy problem. Who'd want to buy a dairy farm? Who'd want to be a dairy farmer? So, well, they're different questions, and why is it a dairy farm? It's got good land, there's infrastructure, there's water resource, there's climate. It could do a myriad of things. Just because it's presently milking cows doesn't mean it's a dairy farm. And, I'm always a little bemused. I heard a story a few years ago that Gina Reinhardt had bought a Wagyu farm. I thought, no, she's bought a farm. There happens to be Wagyus on it. It's not a Wagyu farm. But, it's that perception, right, that what it's currently doing is therefore what it must do.
Yep.
So, we look for those areas of distress too and understand or seek to understand why, and is there something else that could be done with it? And as I said, an example was Northern Dairy, and more recently it's been warm climate grape production. So, the Riverina, Sunraysia and Riverland, unfortunately, are suffering a prolonged period of hardship. And, of course, the question goes out, who'd want to own a vineyard at Griffith? And you say, well, the answer is probably not many on today's grape prices and last year's and the years before. But, if you've got good soil, good infrastructure, good water resource, there's a price point where the grapes can come out and a more profitable crop can be planted. And so whilst everyone's running away from that space, that's captured our interest, and we've turned towards it and said, well, what would we do if we're able to get, our foot on some of these? So, they're the sorts of things we look for. One of our staff members has got a great saying, we don't have a mortgage on all the good ideas, and we certainly don't. We like to gather the information and gather the facts and apply independent thought, not just follow the herd. But we're really open to good ideas can come from anywhere, and generally they don't come through the computer screen. You've got to get out there in industry, look, listen, ask questions, and test your assumptions. So they can come from anywhere, Hutch, but we do try and increase the probability of success by conducting our own research and applying independent thought.
How thorough is that research and due diligence that you do?
I'd like to think it's very thorough, and there's quite a lot of depth to it. It doesn't mean that you can always have complete answers to every question either, and nor can you eliminate every risk. And to be honest, nor do we want to eliminate every risk. It's the risk of farming that makes it worth doing. It's the risk of farming that I think should make it attractive to outside capital. The things that drive farm performance are very different to the things that drive the equities market. A good mate who's a Mallee farmer last year or the year before, COVID and everything was shut up and falling apart. He said, oh, geez, what's happening down in the big smoke? What's the market going to do? How's it going to respond? I said, well, why do you care? If you get an inch of rain tomorrow, there's no recession for you. He goes, oh, yeah, good point. And the drivers are different. And so, I think that's part of the appeal. And, and we're big subscribers in, no risk, no return. So we do accept risk. We're not reckless in how we accept risk, because that can, of course, ultimately end in disaster. But we willingly accept risk because that's how you create return. But in accepting those risks, we try to understand them and manage them as best possible.
Liam, what's the opportunity? You mentioned trying to grow and innovate and expand through retained earnings, and debt has its limitation. What's the opportunity for farming families, given that that's been their traditional sources of funds to underpin growth? What do you see as the opportunity for farming families in pursuit of that NFF target that you mentioned?
Yeah. And I should say, it's tough to generalise, right? What is it, 80 or 100,000 farm businesses in Australia? Every one of them's different, and their resource base is different, their management capability is different, their goals are different, their families are different. So, it's not a one cap fits all type scenario. And certainly there are some outrageously successful agricultural businesses, and we just want to see more of them, or we want to see more assets in their hands. And I think, again, we touched on Bill Malcolm at the outset. Bill's got a great saying. The greatest threat to the family farmer is the family next door that does it better. It's no one else, and I think that's so true. And we'd like to see those underutilised assets in the hands of those family farmers. I take my hat off to many of those family businesses that have been very aggressive with their growth. They've geared up, they've taken on debt, they've ridden the land price boom of the last 5 years and been really successful. I think there's a few that are vulnerable now, though, that they may have overextended. Seasons have turned a bit, commodity prices have turned a bit, interest rates have obviously risen significantly. So there's a few feeling a bit vulnerable. But the opportunities, at a macro level is there is a wall of capital that wants to invest in Australian farmland, that wants to invest in food production, that wants to invest in real assets, that wants to invest in natural capital and biodiversity and carbon. So that exists. But the expertise to do it and do it well, I think, is in scarce supply. And that creates a great opportunity for those capable family farm businesses that can point to a track record and say, well, this is how we do it. And, working with, I know you work with those sorts of businesses every day, Jeremy. They're there. Are they open to leveraging their capability by partnering with, and partnering is a pretty broad church, partnering with alternative sources of capital, and that could be they buy into the business, it could be a joint venture over there, it could be a contract management or service provision type scenario. I think it takes lots of shapes and colours. It's about being open to the fact we might have a valuable skill set that another party will recognise and reward us for, and that might mean we can do more of the things we're really passionate about, but not increase our risk profile. So, yeah, I think it's having an open mind and being able to recognise that within some of these family businesses are really unique and scarce skill sets that are valuable, and I think going forward will only be valued more so.
I might be biased here, Liam, but it speaks to the importance of building out your business skill set as a farm business owner.
Yeah, it's absolutely. And again, hats off to those family businesses that are good at production and good at finance and good at marketing and good at planning and good at setting out the vision and strategy for the family and good at solving for succession and good at having the difficult conversations, good at providing safe work environments. They exist, right? But it's a big job too. And I think one of the benefits of growth and some scale is that you can move away from having to be a generalist where you've got to be good at everything to having sufficient scale to create specialist positions in your organisation or in your farm business. And so that can be very liberating and empowering too, to sort of say, well, all right, now I'm not the boss of everything. I've got this area to focus on, which I feel I'm really good at and I'm really interested in. And that family member or that employee or that partner has got responsibility for X, Y, and Z. And I think some of the better family businesses or more successful family businesses that I've seen have succeeded with the succession challenges best by having clear areas of interest and expertise between family members and business partners. They're not all tripping over one another, trying to be the expert on everything. They sort of go, well, I'm the sheep guy, you're the cropping guy, I'm the finance guy, I'm the environmental management person, whatever it is, everyone having their area of interest and expertise and working together for better outcomes. So.
Just for our listeners, I'm going to get you to listen to that again. Just encourage you to go back about 90 seconds. Liam kind of listed out a few skills that great farming families have. It'd be good to write those down and rate yourself as a family farm business owner on each of those, just to self-reflect on where you might improve in terms of your business acumen and your development. Great comments, Liam. Thank you. What does the future look like for GO.Farm Australia? Having built a base of $1.3 billion of land assets and transforming those land assets to their highest use, what will the next 10 years look like for you?
Yeah, it's a good question, Hutch. I mean, as I said earlier, what got us to here won't get us to there. We've got an appetite to do more, and that's not just more for more's sake, but we fundamentally believe that the opportunity set in agriculture remains. It's a huge opportunity, both in terms of investment scale and investment return, but then all those other positive attributes that good farming practices deliver into rural communities and into the economy. So, yeah, we're excited by that, energised by that. And I think there is this awakening in institutional land that Australian agriculture, and agriculture probably more broadly, is underinvested and underrepresented in investment portfolios, and they're seeking to get access to that. And I think that creates the fuel to drive the Australian agricultural industry engine. By no means am I suggesting that replaces the family farm model. It doesn't. It won't. It shouldn't. But I think it augments it, and it has a really important role to play in fueling succession, in fueling productivity uplifts, in fueling enhancement in environmental management, and a whole raft of other things. And we want to be part of that. As I said, we haven't got a mortgage on all the good ideas. We think that we have a duty of obligation to the industry, having got to here, to continue on with our purpose, because I believe it's really positive and contributing to a worthwhile outcome. So that's our motivation. We've got a team of really capable people from all walks of life, all colours, all sexes, and by and large, most of them are young, and they want to lean into it and give it a big shove. And I think for us as a business, not to encourage that, not to support that, would be very poor form and a misstep for ourselves and the industry. So now I think our cunning plan, Hutch, is to continue to look for great people and give them big things to do. And I'm convinced we're not going to run out of opportunities anytime soon.
Liam, would you mind just speaking to the team? When growing from that standing start to a team of 250, how do you lead that team, structure it, manage it, and stay nimble and efficient across your projects?
And that's a big question. I'm not sure I've got a good answer, and I'm not sure I'm good at it. I don't know, Hutch. My team might be better placed to respond to you on that than I am. It's a constant process in learning and failing and improving. As I said, we've got a structure in, our formal structure is a board, and myself as managing director, and then we've got an executive team, and they're really capable people with diverse skill sets and area of expertise. But fundamentally, for me, I think it comes down to culture and, the values of the business. And so, we focus on attitudes and behaviours. That's critical. I mean, of course, as a leader in the business, you've got to role model that. You've got to demonstrate it. You can't be the hypocrite that demands it of someone else, but isn't prepared to walk that walk with them. So, yeah, getting the culture right has been important. Key hires have been important, and I'm a bit of a student of Jim Collins, the US academic and business consultant, and I was fortunate to spend 3 days with him in Boulder, Colorado, just before COVID, and that was a phenomenal learning opportunity. And inside the first 2 minutes of being there, he asked the question of us, when you think of your key people, and he defined what key people meant in terms of impact on hires, impact on profitability, impact on strategy. He said, when you think about the key people in your business, give yourself a score 1 to 10, 1 being woeful, 10 being exceptional, on the caliber of those key people. And, then he shortly thereafter said, if your score is anything less than 8, if you learn nothing else, learn that you need to go home and build a better team. And it's so true, right? And in a farm business, your team, it might only be a very small team, but around you, you have consultants and advisors and service providers, and I consider them part of the team, right? So if you're not satisfied with your accountant, if you're not satisfied with your lawyer, if you're not satisfied with whoever it is, then challenge them to improve and deliver the level of service that you expect. And if they can't meet that expectation, assuming it's reasonable, then make the decision to move. And so he talks about bus problems and seat problems. You got to get the right people on the bus, and then if it's not working, then you've got to decide, is it the right person in the wrong seat, or is it a bus problem? We've got to stop and let them off. And we're very fortunate. We have a strong culture. We've got great leaders, and we have built the discipline of, when it's a bus problem, we stop and let people off the bus. And that's never done, in a callous or ruthless way. It has to be done respectfully, but there are points in the journey where the bus has to pull up, and you've got to respectfully invite someone to step off the bus. And when you're a little business starting out, sometimes that's really hard. It's never enjoyable, but I think with practice you get better at it. And sort of saying, well, the choices we make impact the outcome. And if we look past if we look past an unacceptable standard, well, then that becomes the standard. And so it's that constant holding one another to account, and it's up and down, right? It's right across the organisation. I sort of say to the team, these are our expectations. We've got, we call it the GO.Farm way, the way we conduct ourselves, the expectations we have of others, but those same things apply to each and all of us. And, just as much as I might call out, someone's behaviour that isn't aligned to the GO.Farm way, I expect they will do the same if they observe me, stepping out of line of those agreed standards. And it happens. We're all human, and having that candid, honest feedback is really powerful.
You mentioned you've made mistakes along the way, as we all have, Liam. What are some of the biggest lessons or biggest learnings that you reflect on for the journey that you've been on?
Yeah, well, without citing specific examples of, I should have done that and not that, and of course we can all recite those things, I think my biggest mistake in leading and growing this business has not to have demonstrated more courage at times, and not to have been more urgent. Now, there's probably a few around here that would say, oh my goodness, we're always pretty urgent, but I do think, fear of failure or a level of conservatism can hold us back at times. And, we've enjoyed good success and good growth. I just wonder, had I been more courageous and more urgent at various points in the cycle, where might we be now? I don't dwell on that too much, but
no.
I think in moving forward, I do challenge myself to say, are we being courageous enough, which is different to being reckless. But, how bold can we be with our vision, with our plans and strategies, and really have a go, rather than being a little bit timid and sort of saying, well, we'll have a bit of a go and see how we go. Sort of building that conviction and then applying the courage of your conviction to say, this will work. We've got the insights. We've got the capability. We've got the capital. Let's go. I think that would be my reflection and maybe a challenge to your listeners is, are you being courageous enough and are you being urgent enough? And point to those others that, oh, gee, they're being lucky or they're being good or they're whatever else, and say, well, why can't you be them? Maybe they've just been a bit more courageous, a bit more urgent.
I think there is a real conservatism about how so many farming families operate. So I think there's a real lesson in that, mate. Just on reflection, what could you have done or would you have done that might have supported you to be more courageous on that journey?
Yeah, it's a good question. And there's a balancing act, right? Like a bit more self-belief, perhaps. And one of our characteristics as a business is humility, and I suppose have been led by being humble. I guess there's a fine line between being humble and being perceived to be arrogant and overly aggressive and all the rest of it. And so maybe sometimes I've deferred to the humility where I should have been more aggressive in execution of said cunning plan. But at the same time, there's also business validation, right? Where this is a new business, it's a different strategy to what normally has applied in ag. We've got to prove that it works. And, and the writing instruction from my backers was, we believe in you and we believe in the coming plan and we believe in the team, but at the same time, prove it and prove us right. And so, there's been very much a focus on the front end in making sure we nail everything, make every post a winner, and validate the strategy and the team, and ultimately then build support. And maybe we spent too much time with our head down, validating those early strategies, and not enough time with our heads up, looking out at the horizon as to where the next big thing's going to come from. I don't think we've done too badly, but I think there are points in the cycle, and I'll tell you what I reckon it is. There are points in the cycle where I should have just lent into growth and been more aggressive. In a small growing business, I reckon resources, the supply and demand of resources can change rapidly, almost daily or weekly. And, there have been times where our resources have been behind our potential growth trajectory, and that has pulled down our growth trajectory. There have been times where our resources are ahead of our trajectory, and of course, you then worry about cash burn and, are we over-investing? I think inevitably we would have been better placed to have spent more time over-resourced than accepting the impact of being under-resourced as a small and growing enterprise. Now, as I said, motivated by cash, conservation and survival, that probably led to being a little bit more reserved. Let's get the project off the ground and bring the people in. Now we bring the people in, then get the project off the ground. It's that hiring of talent and expecting and only accepting the best people around the table that I think is the key enabler, and we've got much better at saying we've got to front end the sausage factory with that rather than try and time, this perfectly timed arrival of said talent with said opportunity, because that never happens.
Resource ahead of growth.
Yeah. There you are. I've taken 10 minutes to babble away. You've articulated it very well.
Not at all, but I think that's key. I think so often, especially as farming family owners, we think that we've got to grow, and once we've grown, then we can justify getting talent in. But, in entrepreneurship, there are so many people like Jim Collins that say, surround yourself in great people and then work out where you're going.
Don't do it the other way. Find great people and give them big things to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, I'd spend half a day walking around in awe at, the things that my team can do. And I think, oh, geez, I could never do that. And, that's a sad reality for me to have to accept. But at the same time, it's a wonderful strength of the business. Like if everyone had to be able to do what Liam can do at the rate that Liam can do it on the time frame that he can do it, we'd be way back there still. And so not being afraid to have people that are smarter than you or more specialised than you or whatever else, I think's really important. But it takes a willingness to expose yourself to that too.
Liam, really appreciate your time. One last question, if I could. What are you most proud of, mate? You have celebrated your 10th anniversary or your 10th birthday as a business. It has grown from a team of 0 to a team of 250 plus and will continue to grow. It is making an impact in our industry and transforming assets and contributing really positively to communities. We haven't talked about your graduate scholarship and your partnerships with Charles Sturt Uni and how you as a group do give back to community and to the industry and to the next generation coming through in significant ways. But, mate, in all of this, what are you personally most proud of?
Well, I think all of those things, Hutch. I guess on a personal level, my deepest satisfaction and source of pride is outside of the business. It's, my wife and children. It's the family and the life we're building together. That's the greatest source of pride for me. As it relates to the business, I think it's the people here and the team that we've built. As I say, I find it quite extraordinary, the things that we're able to achieve. So that's a great source of pride. And the contribution that we're making to an industry that I'm so passionate about, that gives me a massive buzz. And as I said, at the expense of hubris, I just think the GO.Farm model, I think, can be used to demonstrate to others the power of removing capital barriers, embracing change, being prepared to innovate, being prepared to take calculated risks. The outcome of that, or the slow magic, as our old mate Bill Malcolm refers to it, the slow magic of investing in people and technology and change just compounds in so many ways across, whether it be asset values, investment returns, team capability, industry capability, community resilience. It just keeps paying back, and that gives me a massive buzz.
Mate, I find it really interesting that on reflection you say you wish you had have been slightly more courageous and more urgent. Mate, as a friend from back in 1995 when we were at uni, I just want to commend you on the courage and the urgency that you have shown to achieve what you have achieved in your career prior to GO.Farms, but over the last sort of 10 plus years since, and to have grown out a project that is making such an impact as we've just touched on. Congratulations on your courage and your conviction and on the team that you've assembled and the impact you're having. It's incredible. And on behalf of our team, we look forward to continuing to support that journey in whatever way that we can.
Well, thank you for your sincere praise there. It makes me a little bit emotional. I'm not good at hearing that sort of stuff. And as I said, it's GO.Farm now, fortunately, is very little to do with Liam. It's the team, and the team is the people here in the business, but it's the whole network of investors and service providers and helpers and backers and cheerers and supporters. And for me to take the credits, it would be misplaced and a bit rich, but I accept the sentiment and thank you for your interest and your friendship and ongoing support, and well done for the great work that I think Farm Owners Academy is doing. And we're happy to, I personally and GO.Farm, delighted to support in any way, shape or form we can, because I'm sure the collective wisdom between your members and network and our own can come together to do really good things.
Mate, always great to connect. Thanks for your time and speak again soon. And there you have it, ladies and gents. Liam, great to connect with you again, mate. It's always significant to catch up and to chat and to reflect. One of my mentors talks about that leadership is about making bold and well-informed predictions of the future. So, like Liam did, I challenge all of us to make bold and really well-informed predictions about our future and then be courageous and have real conviction towards pursuit of that vision. Liam talks about the importance of getting great people around you and giving them meaningful challenges to own and go after. A great thing to reflect on within families and within farm business teams. The importance of innovating and embracing new technologies and new advances and looking for ways to make the most of the assets that we have and look for the highest use of the assets that we have. Even to look and get really creative around accessing capital that's beyond retained earnings and debt. There are farming families out there that team up with high net worth individuals and come up with creative models around how to expand beyond the support of just the bank. So get creative around that. And Liam and at GO.Farm is a great example of that. And then highlights for me the importance of investing in relevant business skills and continuing to grow our skill sets as farm business leaders so that we can play at the next level. Liam mentioned Jim Collins, and I highly recommend Jim's books. Good to Great is the first one, and then Great by Choice. If you haven't read those books, I encourage you to download them or go and grab them. Jim Collins, Good to Great, and Great by Choice, an incredible authority on business and business growth. Liam, great to connect, mate. As always, thank you so much for your time, for your openness and your willingness to share your backstory. But I hope this podcast does the success of GO.Farm Australia and your last 10 years some justice. Thanks, everyone. Take care and bye for now.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Profitable Farmer podcast by Farm Owners Academy. If you're new to this show, be sure to follow us. If you've been a long-time listener, let your friends know about us or come continue the conversation in the Profitable Farmer Facebook group. All the best as you grow your business and create your freedom farm. Until next time, keep being incredible.